Hi, I'm Justin. I'm a father, actor, animator, and business owner. My journey's been pretty wild so far, and it only gets better from here. Let's go. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Justin's Journey. This is just me talking to people, and today I'm very excited to announce my guest, who is my best friend. He is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He owns and operates a dojo. You operate a dojo, man. You know that I tell my kids, you are daddy's ninja friend. That's how they refer to you. Oh, you mean daddy's ninja friend? I'm like, yeah, that's the one. What else have I got written down here? Jeez, man, you are an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, highly intelligent individual, and basically, ladies and gentlemen, any chance you get to just listen to what this guy has to say is beneficial. Drew freaking Weatherhead. Hello.
That was an awesome introduction for I consider myself like a real good bullshit artist that's gone far with it so far.
That's because that's because you're hard on yourself, as we talked about in, interestingly, your interview. I came on your show, which is at it's the Because Jitsu podcast.
That's right.
That's right. And your other media platform stuff, just to get it out of the way, because-jitsu.com, worth checking out if you want to know anything about jiu-jitsu or everything. You know, it's all there basically. And at because_jitsu is the Instagram.
That's right. Yeah. And on Instagram, it's just jokes and memes. That's all that one is.
Yes.
But that's where most people know me, because it blew up. I guess most people like to laugh and not learn.
That's the first thing I wanted to ask you about, Drew, is because tell me again, how long did you do these jiu-jitsu specific memes consistently without, as you said, without missing a day?
Yeah, well, to date, I haven't missed a day to date. And it started September 9th in 2015. So we're coming up on year 6.
Holy shit. So 6 years of, now, if I've got that right, every single day for 6 years?
Yeah, at least once was a brand new created piece of content for that page.
Oh.
So nothing, like there was some stuff that was reshared and stuff, but that didn't count. I had to make a brand new joke, a brand new meme, some sort of original content every single day.
Wow. And so, okay, was that usually one, or some days as you got into the flow, did it become more than one?
One was the minimum. And that was usually when I was resting on my laurels, if I was like, focusing on other projects, or if I just wasn't feeling it for a time, which happens, it comes and goes with inspiration, but I would not let myself break that streak. It was just too important to me. And there's been other projects where I have taken the same ethos and run with it day, every day, putting something out. And then I did break it because it didn't mean as much to me as that one that was running. And it became a habit so fast that I was allowed to break that particular cycle. And I haven't been able to get back into the cycle for those ones yet.
Oh, shit. Okay. So this leads into what I want to talk about again. Now, as I mentioned briefly, I was on your podcast, Because Jitsu podcast. We had a hell of a lot of fun. I've got better audio this time. I've got my audio equipment.
Yes.
I put a little too much faith into my headset over the phone the last time. But despite that, we got some good feedback. And we talked a lot on that show about the subjects we talk about often, which is motivation, getting after this stuff. But what we didn't get a chance to touch on is that we're real human beings, and it's not any easier for us to get out of bed in the morning than it is for normal people. I think some people have this misconception, like, oh, there are people that are bred just kind of go. Maybe there's some bits and pieces of truth to that, but it isn't easy. You have to grind after it. What it is possible.
Yeah. You know what, this thing, and I'm totally just as culpable for this throughout the years, is you look at people that are above you in whatever you're in, whether it's financially, socioeconomically, at work, if it's somebody who's in a role of authority above you, people who are on that next level, no matter what that is to you. Maybe it's a celebrity, maybe there's several levels above, and you're like, just automatically there's this thing that happens. I don't know if it's just bred into society or if it's bred into people, that we consider them something different. And that's something to look up to, but not really to aspire to, because I couldn't do that. Like there's that. I feel like, at least for myself, that's something that I've fought for a long time against. But I should say vice versa. I've actually had that foisted upon me or believed that for a long time and had to fight back against it as of late because it's just so bred into my brain, is that I don't deserve the success I'm getting, which is very common for people that get any modicum of success. They call it imposter syndrome. You feel like everybody knows that you're the elephant in the room and just doesn't want to let you know, like you're not supposed to be there, kind of thing. But there's this thing that happens when you get to that next level that I'm starting to notice, because I've been on these paths for a while now and gotten very far on some of them. And I look around laterally to people that are on there that have been on there before me. And maybe I was looking up to them beforehand, and they're just people, man. Like if they're a millionaire, they're just people. If they're a multi-business corporation owner, if they're, an entrepreneur or somebody who's breaking new ground in science, they're just people. And everything about them is basically transferable across the board. And usually there's like little tiny proclivities that make the difference, but mostly what it is just the effort put forward on a continuous basis. And this is what's gotten me so far in this meme page, which for people who don't follow the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu meme page or meme scene, which most people outside of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wouldn't, me living here in like Bumpkinville, Alberta has the largest BJJ meme page in planet Earth.
Yes.
And there's no reason I should have that if it mattered where I was from or who I trained under, or, it was all it was just day in, day out, constant practice. Making jokes is something that I wasn't immediately good at. I had to figure it out, and I put the effort in every single day, coming back to it. And same thing with business. I'm learning, there's a different problem for you to solve, but if you just decide to put them off to the corner for a while, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah. There's this quote. I want to look it up. Only right when, because I want to get the quote right. It's one of my favorite quotes. Who is it by though? It's one of my favorite quotes. I don't know who. William Faulkner. I only write when I am inspired. Oh no, that's
when inspiration
right.
hits.
I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9:00 sharp.
I love that quote.
It's consistency. 6 years almost you're coming up on doing it every day. And you're exactly right. You learn to train the muscles that you kind of push towards training. And that is comedic as well. Misconception, like you said, people that have done it, they're other or whatever, but that's also talents and things like that as well. Now, it may be true that some people have certain proclivities one way or another, but even comedians, I've heard them say it lots, will say the more you do it, the more your mind begins to wire in that direction. Somebody says a joke to you, and 2 hours later on the drive home, you think of the perfect comeback, and you're like, I should have, if I had said that. And the next time it comes to you 20 minutes later, and then 5 minutes later. But if that's what you're trying to train, especially if you're on, as Bill Burr says, on stage, eating your own balls every night again and again, eventually you just start to wire the circuits. Or
that's right.
Or maybe you just fail yourself right out of it. And that's actually okay as well.
Sure. Well, there's this thing that's, I don't know if everybody understands the differentiation between, and that's a difference between talent and skill. So to be skilled, I should do it the other way around. People born with talent make them just naturally at least a slightly higher level than average at a certain thing. So somebody who's a talented swimmer, they took to the water as a kid, and it was like second nature for them. And it became very easy to learn the techniques of the breaststroke and the dog paddle and everything. And all of a sudden they were going into swimming competitions. But even if you aren't born with the talent, you can gain the skill to do the same thing. It's just going to take more effort in the same thing. This is something that you run into at the high end of any sort of skill pool. And I found that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself. I find myself, I was always talented at what it took to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And part of that was I have a sponge mind, is I just pick up techniques like the moment I see them, and I can use them the same class. A lot of people don't have that. And what they have, I call a grinder mentality. They got to like drill it 100 reps before they can even close to get it right against a resisting opponent. And that's fine. The thing is, they'll get to the same end result. It'll just take them a little more effort, but that's only at the beginning level. When you get to the high level of any skill pool, you're going to run into people who either got there because they're straight grinders or got there because they had talent. But the people that are at the very peak usually have both. And or you'll get somebody at the very top who's been like a serious grinder, and you'll find somebody that had a ton of talent but didn't want to put in the work
Yes.
to grind to get that extra XP. They just figure that I'm a savant at this thing. I'm the best that there ever was. I'm God's gift to whatever. And everybody is going to, fall beneath me. And then you run into a guy who never had that had a hunger and a desire and just burned it into his daily schedule and put more work in than you. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, not only is he at your level, but he actually passed you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I had an acting teacher that explained the exact same thing to me, that there are people, like you said, very naturally talented. And then sometimes they rest on that a little too much. And then the people that don't have that natural talent as obviously work and grind so much. She said they obviously are they oftentimes are much better. She said, of course, the people who are the most skilled are the ones who have both, who have just outrageous natural talent and grind harder than anyone else. Those are those very rare people that get to the top levels of their discipline.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that you get from grinding that you don't get from born talent is work ethic. And that's something that I find with a lot of artistic types. So people who are naturally gifted in some form of the arts is they rely completely on their art, and they are terrible when it comes to keeping their schedule. It's terrible when they come to trying to get any sort of pattern in life. They just expect that their art is everything they need, and anything outside of that is a waste of their time. And they tend to sort of just stagnate. I see this a lot, and they get depressed, and things aren't working out for them. And it's like, man, even for people with a ton of talent, you can't just expect the world to work for you. You got to still work for it. And this is something that people that have never had to have a 9-to-5 job, or never, had a like real worker kind of job, that you had to not only get up at 5 a.m, but you had to like do hard labor for 12 hours. Like that builds something into your personality that you can then carry forward into your artistic endeavors that will, again, like you're saying, push further than the person that didn't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that grind is more beneficial overall than natural talent. Natural talent's almost kind of like just those base attributes that you get blessed with beginning with. But if you don't grind and get after it, nothing's going to happen in life. Nothing's going to happen. You know something about that. I remember you working a few of those jobs like you described.
Oh yeah.
Getting up early, grinding your ass off.
I did that for decades. That was, to me, that was probably more necessary than I'd like to admit, because while it was happening, I felt very trapped in that sort of lifestyle, because I didn't want to be there, but I felt like I needed to be there just to pay the bills. I kind of got in that cycle, just like make the money to pay the bills, make the money to pay the bills over and over and over and over and over, not really going anywhere. But what I definitely got out of that was this worker mentality that I could pour into now my passion, the art that I want to do, so this is what's pushing me. Like I have people, when I tell them all the projects that I have, or they notice all the things I'm doing at any given time, are wondering, how the hell do you have the energy and the effort to put into so many things at once? And to me, it's quite simple, because they're the things I want to do.
Right.
Everybody's got the same amount of time in the day. I just put the time into it that is necessary to keep it going. That's it. There's no more to the formula.
Yes. And there's little things that can help with that, like being efficient with your time too. I know for me, I can easily get into 6 things that interest me and bounce around in between those things and have little progress on each of them. Whereas if I schedule my time and stick to my schedule pretty harshly on myself, that's when I get things done. And when I do that, for me, my personality, I find that in an hour, I can accomplish more on a project than I sometimes do in 3 days. If I know that's my cutoff time, then it tends to really kind of put me in that flow, of really trying to knock the stuff out by that certain point.
Yeah. What I think might be a little bit of what's going on, not everything that's going on, but your personality has an OCD tendency to it. And that's
a big fuck yeah, buddy.
Yeah. And that can be used as a really strong advantage. A lot of people think of it as a disadvantage, like you're constantly, trying to be specific or get stuck on certain things. But if you can use that as your own superpower, your OCD can be put into your whiteboards and your dream boards and the things that you really like spend the time. People don't spend the time to do that stuff unless they're obsessed.
Right.
And you can use that obsessive compulsion to push it towards your passions. And I kind of have the same thing, but less in the OCD mentality and more in the ADD mentality. Is I do a bunch of different things at once, and it feels natural to me. I don't feel like that holds me back. Like I'm not only giving 10% to each. I'm trying to give 100% just over here now and over here now and over here now and over here now. And it definitely could screw with you if you let it get away from you. But I feel like I've got it harnessed at this point, and I understand how to make myself work efficiently with my own mental proclivities instead of in spite of.
Okay, that's really fascinating, those little differences in personality. Because I mean, everybody has to be adaptable to some degree, because you can't just structure your life on paper exactly and it's always going to work out that way. Stuff's going to come up. So you have to have some flexibility. But that's interesting how maybe what you described is that you can bounce between a few projects a little bit more and then stay efficient for those little scraps, those little chunks of time you put on each thing, right? I mean, I guess, especially in a digital age, sometimes a project only requires attention for maybe 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, and then you leave it rendering or something while you jump to another thing, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever the situation.
I feel like you need to make the best of the situation or the cards that you're dealt.
Yes.
And the more time you spend trying to either change that or get, I don't know, pessimistic because of that is not only energy wasted, time wasted, but it actually like puts the brakes on your own projects for no good reason. There was a time in my life when I was a young kid, when I got diagnosed with ADD, that I think I was in grade 6 or grade 7. It was all the rage in the 90s, but they did this little test that I did for a couple of days with a teacher in a room, and they said I was ADD. So what did the ADD guys get? They got Ritalin. So I went on Ritalin for about a year, maybe a little less.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but I don't hold it against my parents, because looking back as a parent now, I understand the mentality to it, but I was disappointed once I came off it, because like I said, I was only on it for a year or less. I didn't get rid of ADD. I got rid of the pills. They were telling me that, and this might have been what the doctors were telling them, that they told me they were smart pills. I need to take these to make my brain work right.
Oh, wow.
Because my brain isn't working quite right.
Oof.
And if I take these pills, and this is the philosophy of why people go on these pills like Ritalin and Adderall and stuff to, sort of fuck with your brain chemistry a little bit to make it more efficient. Why wouldn't you want to do that? I get that. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I still get people today that I talk to that are either on some derivative of that or know friends that just say, well, you just got the wrong dose. You just need to keep playing with it and you'll find that right dial. You just got to tweak it a little bit here, a little bit there. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I could probably play chemistry with my brain for a while and figure out something where I was like, I like that feeling. Or, and this was the way that I decided to go about it, is I could become the master of my own brain.
Right.
And instead of trying to fight the horse that's bucking, I'm going to ride it.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to move with it instead of trying to stop it. And again, I've feel like I've harnessed the power of my ADD to be able to do multiple things, that I've turned it into my own little superpower.
I love that. What a great description. What an awesome analogy. I had some experience with the Ritalin. They diagnosed me, I think, HHHD.
You got the H? Yeah.
AD,
my brother got the H.
AD,
That's extra.
Super duper hyperactive.
I feel like ADD was like the hipster version before they realized the H was there. So I got in like I was ground floor.
Then they met kids like me and they were like, this kid needs another letter, man. Holy shit. But same thing. I was on it for a short time. I didn't like the experience either. I had a bit of as a bit of a callback to the interview that I did on your show. You mentioned growing up that you please correct me if this could be worded better. but you struggled with a little bit of confidence as a young kid. Like you didn't think you had these abilities. And what's interesting to me is, as a kid, I didn't feel that so much. I literally, man, I was drawing a picture one time and a fucking teacher grabbed it off my desk. This is true. I must have been, I was in grade 6 maybe or something like that. And he says in front of the whole class, he says, Justin, you really better pay attention, because if you apply yourself as hard as you possibly can, you might be able to be a janitor in your life. Oh yeah.
Wow.
That's I could tell you a few stories of crazy shit that I had teachers say to me, like, you don't say that to a kid. But I remember even at that time in my life thinking, you don't know what you're talking about, even in my little kid mind. And I had people tell me I couldn't drum. I had someone say, you're not nearly talented enough to learn the drums. Not talented enough to learn the drums. And I remember thinking, fuck you, I'm going to learn the drums.
Yeah. That'll only be funny to people who have heard you drum, because you're like the best drummer I've ever met by orders of magnitude. It is ridiculously laughable that somebody in retrospect would have said that.
Well, I appreciate that. I applied my ADHD to the fucking drums, you know?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, man. And I've talked to somebody who is big in the jiu-jitsu space, and he brought something up on a podcast I did with him. He said that the stories that we tell ourselves are important. And another side to that, which I think you and I have been talking to and could talk to more, is that the stories that other people tell you are important as well. What's important about them is if you let them set or not.
Yeah.
You didn't let that set. You said, fuck you, I'm going to become the best drummer. You said, I'm not going to become a janitor. I'm going to become an animator. You're drawing in class, and guess what? You got a job doing 3D art, for giant companies for major motion pictures.
Right.
That teacher had no idea that was even possible. He would laugh at the idea, but
at the
you
time,
didn't let that set. You didn't let that set. Vice versa. I had a parent who told me that I was a follower my whole life growing up, and I trusted them, and I believed it because my parent was telling me that. I let it stick. I let it get to me. And even when I was leading, even when I was running 400-person jiu-jitsu tournaments, even when I had my own small business, even when I had, all these different types of authority that I sort of just worked my way into, I didn't really allow it to be real to myself. This is where I was talking about the self-doubt. It's not necessarily that I didn't believe myself so much as I did believe that this isn't who I am. I let somebody tell me who I was before I was able to become someone,
You were believing that old story that got locked into you. Yeah,
that's right.
It's interesting too. Like when we say we grew up, we didn't grow up as like little kids in kindergarten or anything like that, but like around like age 16 thereabouts or something, we sort of connected there. No, I was 17, 18.
I think the first time I met you came to Kamloops to meet some friends, some mutual friends.
Yes.
But I didn't actually know you or hang out with you until we were like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
I had already moved out of my parents' house and was living in Calgary, I guess. I was living with my grandma for a year working construction.
You used to, well, before that, when you lived in Kamloops still, you used to bus up every other weekend or something like that and bring your PlayStation. You were the hot shit with your fucking PlayStation at the time. We would play that thing. You don't remember that? And we used to play those little Mage Night guys and all that. That was fun.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I would bus up from Calgary.
So what I remember about that time coming out and meeting you for the first time when some of our mutual friends connected is I remember my brother and a friend of his had been playing the guitar for a few years at that point and getting kind of good. And as I recall, they showed you, hey, we're learning the guitar and this is the stuff we can do. And you watched it really fascinated, like, whoa, cool. And I don't think you had even picked the guitar up at that point. And then we saw you, I think, a year later, and you were better than both of them combined. You motherfucker. This has been my experience of you the whole time I've known you, is that whatever the hell you pick up, you just happen to be the best at it in no time at all. So that's why it was so weird to me on your show when you said you didn't have a lot of confidence or whatever, or some degree of that growing up, because observing you third person from the outside, every stupid thing you touched, you were the best at it. in very little time. Chris, or that other friend of ours, Chris, he would do the BMX bike shit, and he took us out to some track, and there was like a 12-foot drop, and all of us were like, we're not touching that. And Drew's like, no, let me try that. And we're all waiting for you to die. And you went, and you didn't do it beautifully, but
it wasn't great, but
you did it, though. You did it. You
Yeah.
went flying off, and you landed, and the back tire didn't annihilate you on the thing. That's just one of 50 examples I could come up with where just watching you pick it up, and you know, it's so weird because these stupid stories people tell us, whether it's good intentioned or not, my experience of you was some of the stories you're telling me that locked in bore no relationship to the guy that I watched.
Well, let me tell you some formative stories here outside of being drugged when I was younger. But first of all, I want to correct you with the guitar thing. I was probably being modest when I said that. I had been playing since I was 12 years old. So I'd played for like 6 years at least at that point.
Oh, you fooled me.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too, is I always tend to rise to the level of the people that are around me. And I try to be the top of my friend group at whatever the skill is. I could never beat you in Halo, but that was always the goal, right? I was competitive in that way, in that I never wanted to be second to the people around me. And that helped me, you know, I sort of funneled that competition mindset into actual jiu-jitsu competitions in the same way. It did me no favors when YouTube came around and I had to start competing with the world. that knocked my ego back several pegs. But there was a point, to go back to the formative story, when I was, again, I think I was 11 or 12 years old. This is about the same time I picked up guitar, but I don't think they have a relation to each other. But I was at the swimming pool in Kamloops, and there was a 5-meter diving board. So there was the 1-meter diving board, which is a springy one. You know, everybody does their little tricks off that. There's the 3-meter diving board, which was a springy one, but it was 3 times as high. I was like, no,
like
some people will try tricks off that.
Yeah.
Most people just cannonball or something, you know, they're like, oh, I went off the high one.
Yeah.
And then there's the 5-meter, which is a platform. That's cement. There's no bounce on that one. That is literally a cliff that you jump off of. When I was growing up, I was a small kid. I didn't hit my growth spurt until after I graduated. I was like 18 years old by the time I actually started growing up. So I was a runt. I was the little kid in my group. And going up on the 5-meter was terrifying. And I would walk up to the edge of it and look down, sort of hang my toes over and look down. And it might as well have been a mile off of the water. And a couple of my friends were doing it. And I would watch them from the ground level, and they'd do their jump and they do their spin and they'd splash, and none of them died. I'm like, maybe this is something I should try. And I talked myself back and forward for probably an hour of the 2 hours that we were there. And finally, I remember the actual mind steps that I took to get myself off that thing. I climbed up there and I stood probably for like 5 minutes trying to think of how I'm going to talk myself off the edge. And finally it came down to the point where I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do, Drew. All I'm going to do is I'm going to walk until I am off the edge, and I can make all my regrets after that. If I don't like it, at least I'm off the edge when I realize that. And that's exactly what I did. I literally walked and fell off the edge of the 5-meter. And not only did I survive, but it was a blast. And I spent the next hour constantly, repetitively jumping off the 5-meter. That's the only thing I did for the rest of the time. And literally, I will come back to this story constantly whenever I have to make a scary decision, and just tell myself, I'm going to do the thing and make my regrets after it. And without fail, doing the thing, A, isn't as hard or scary as it seems when you actually do it. And B, you can usually course correct after the fact, even if there are regrets. It's actually, you don't get anywhere without actually trying something, and you get further than you think when you do.
That is fascinating because I got these Oracle cards and I know you're not into that shit. I am so into that shit. I love it. And there's one that keeps coming up, and it's an image of a person jumping off a cliff. And it's talking about how you have to jump. You got to be bold and jump. I should go get them right now, shuffle them, see if that's what comes up. That's what I should do. But you're so right. And that comes back to the core of the conversation we had before on your podcast, which is just get into motion. And,
That's right.
and you said like a lot of people get kind of stuck at home, miserable. I believe I even heard somewhere that statistically, a lot of people who get trapped in a position they don't like are actually very intelligent people, which is why, I mean, intelligence is great. Don't get me wrong. And you should work on improving your intelligence and all of that. And there's ways to do that. But if you get stuck in that cycle of just overthinking things and never acting,
right,
you won't end up in a good place. You're way better off to get into action and to get moving and figure out the bits and pieces that work and don't work along the way. And again, like to go back to kind of what I've been doing as of late is I have so many interests. Same thing. I do a number of things all at once, but I had to turn it into a pretty big list and chop a lot off the bottom, and really put it into order, which maybe 5 projects right now really deserve my attention. And I've had to make sure those are in line with my long-term goals so that I'm doing exactly what I've been talking about for a while now, which is just figure out what you're taking aim at and actually take aim at that thing, because it's better to be a foot or two off the dartboard that is your best future that you're aiming for than to, just throw the dart in the air. Right.
This is something that you do significantly better than I do. You have a much better idea of like the actual end goal and building yourself in a way that leads towards that. I'm more of the guy in the garden that just knows how to cultivate the thing and lets it explode up towards the sky. I just sort of like follow the where the work takes me, more or less. Like obviously I'll have goals and stuff, but usually they're short term. I don't think I've made a 5-year plan in my life.
Okay. But much of it is about the journey as well. And would you say, because I would say for sure, what would you say about, because there's debate sometimes about whether you should pursue your passion or pursue something that, functions a little more practically. But I think whatever your passion is, it isn't an accident. And you can turn your passion and what the things that you really love into a viable business. And that is largely exactly what you've managed to do, whether you kind of are going along for your own ride or taking aim.
Yeah, I agree. The combination of the two is important though, because you're going to find people that crash and burn, that just jump off the cliff with no idea where they're going. They're just going to follow their passion and they have no plan. They have no money. They have, if they didn't get this audition, if it didn't come through, they don't have a way to make the rent kind of thing. That's a really, really hard ask. And I bet you most people that are successful that you talk to didn't do that. In fact, what I did, and what I would suggest to most people, just again, because if I were to spread, my shot across a group of people, I would want it to mean the most to the most people instead of being like, well, somebody out there is going to make it on their first try. And so all of you should try that. I would suggest that you have a fiscal responsible plan. For me, it was getting into welding. I got a trade ticket and that ticket never expires. I'm a welder the rest of my life. And my problem was I never stopped at that point. I was like, well, I guess I'm a welder the rest of my life. Fuck. But what it ended up being finally for me was my backup plan. That's how it should have been, right? I wish I had gotten to my passion sooner, but at least I had my backup plan on deck. Okay. It took me three or 4 years to get that thing, but whenever I needed it, the trade would be there. Now I've got my passion that I went out with, not only the work mentality that trade got me, not only the finances that brought me into to help fund my passion, but also just a little bit of like a safety net, if you need to fall back for a little bit. And I know with you as well, you have your painting business that you can rely on that while you shoot for the stars in other directions. And I'm sure the moment that your stars align and you get, that career going that is in your passion field, the painting will be there later. You can leave it for another time.
Sure. It might be a nice retirement option. I don't know. I met the guy who acted Biff from the Back to the Future movies.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if many people know this, but he is a painter. That's a lot of what he does is he paints homes, usually for Hollywood celebrities and things like that. And that guy has continued working for decades, many decades, and he does stand-up comedy as well too. And he has a very practical way. I talked to him about it, and He's like, you just do your jokes, and if they work, you do them again. If they don't work, you throw them out. Which isn't 100%. That's not 100% in my view, but it was really cool to listen to him. This is just the formula. You follow this formula long enough, and you'll have a bunch of jokes you can do. And
that's a grinder mentality, right?
That's the grinder mentality, and that's why grinding is better than talent. They're both awesome together, but grinding generates.
Everybody skill. Can do that.
Anybody can grind. Yeah. Anybody can grind, and then we should talk about too the times that you do fall off the horse. The times that, like, I don't want to go to too many of the dark places in this one. One day, very thoughtfully, I might talk about some of the dark places I've ended up in, cautiously, because some of that's just for me. I don't have to share every goddamn detail with the world.
Definitely.
But I've had times that were harder to get out of bed. I'll just say that much. And times where I'm killing it for a long stretch of time, and then something knocks you off. And so, Drew, talk about your thoughts behind and philosophy behind the importance of kind of resetting from time to time, and sometimes frequently.
Well, I mean, of all the points in my life up to this point, the last year has been the most of that for me. Most of what you're talking about has been in the last year. So it's recent. I can talk to it. I've had to many times talk myself to keep going forward, to convince myself that even though shit's falling apart, that we can make it, part of that is going to come down to what I consider a mentality of just DIY, like do it yourself, nothing's going to stop you kind of thing. But that only gets you so far, especially when you've already taken enough hits in a row. I find that it's very important to have some sort of friend network that you can talk to people openly about things. If you have a significant other, that's kind of a built-in one. That's, my wife is very good for that. But what you can't do is internalize it and just shoulder the whole burden by yourself, because that is a bad formula for when it comes to failure. If you're already down, you need to take some of that load off of your shoulder. And that's what people who you trust, not just people that you like, okay, people who you trust are going to give you the right energy to keep you going. There's times where you need that, and you have to lean on those people. And if they're the right people, they're going to love to help you out. You don't have to tell them all the details, but just tell them, that things aren't going right now, and they should be able to pick it up from there to tell you that, they believe in you and you're going to get through this. And sometimes that's all the energy you need to just get your foot back under your ass so you can start walking forward again.
Yeah. You've been that for me.
And vice versa.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Talk about the power in simplifying the things that you create. I also think it's important, if people that may be listening to this that are starting to think maybe I should start that thing or whatever, I think it's very beneficial to look at what you have around you. It's devastatingly depressing to look at all this stuff you do not have. Don't have a big budget, maybe don't have this resource or that resource. Ignore all that, put together, even if it's just a little pile of things, your skills, your assets, the tools, put together what you do have and let the ideas come out of that. But then also don't get too complicated. And Drew, this is one that you kind of got me onto and educated me on, and it's been very helpful, is to simplify.
Well, I'll give a perfect example of that happened within the last year. So there in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu space, one of the major industries is digital instruction. And this is something that I've been getting into a lot over the last, year and a half or so. I've really poured a lot of myself in. And there are certain mainstays in the industry that already exists, like household names that people look to. And one of them in jiu-jitsu is called BJJ Fanatics. If you're going to find jiu-jitsu instructionals, everybody knows BJJ Fanatics has all of the best names. They've got just the largest catalog. They're very well respected in the industry. And one of the things about their format is they fly in the instructor to their home-based studio in Boston. shoot there, instructional there. So it's all on brand. It's all got the BJJ Fanatic stuff in the background. It all looks like, it makes the instructor look good too, because this guy was shooting in the same place that this world champion was, which gives him that kind of credibility. And I get it. It's a really good model. But I had been making my own stuff in-house here just to sell online through my meme page. I was trying to like cross brand with my personal brand to get the instruction out there as well. And I had some people say, like, why don't you make it a Fanatics model? Why don't you have people like make instructionals for you instead of you doing it all yourself? Because I mean, not everybody wants to learn from me, and not everybody wants to learn the things that I'm going to teach. But if you get enough different people in there, then there's something for everyone. It just makes it for a better marketplace for the buyer. I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea and all, and this is where I wasn't looking at what I had. I was looking at what I didn't have. Yep. I was like, I don't have the budget to be bringing people in to shoot in my area. All my equipment's here. I'm in Canada. Most of the people that I would want to bring up are in the US or Brazil. And it's just, there's borders and visas, and everything is just, it's just too complicated. I'm just going to do my own thing here, and it's going to be fine. And then COVID happened, and this interesting thing happened sort of serendipitously, where BJJ Fanatics reached out to me because they saw the stuff that I was doing, and they're like, do you want to shoot for us? And I was like, that sounds amazing. I would love to get my face on your platform. It would really help with getting my brand out there. Problem is, it's during COVID. I'm going to have a real hard time getting across the border right now because the Canadian border is pretty shut down. Even just getting to Boston is going to be a big pain in the ass. There's going to be weeks of quarantine I'm going to have to go through. And they're like, oh, no, don't worry. Just shoot it in-house. Send us the files. We'll edit it. We'll make it look good. We'll make it sound good. And we'll put it on our platform. I was like, hold the fuck on. You can do that? Okay, yeah, for sure. I had them stuff in like 3 days, and they had it out in 3 weeks. And then the aha moment blasted through my brain, like, I can do that. I can just have people do that. They're going to record in their place, send their files to me, and I put it on my platform.
Yes.
That I can do. So I was using the stuff that I have here, and that was more than enough. I overcomplicated it. So yeah. They kind of solved that puzzle for me. But if I would have put my head to it, I could have come to the same conclusion. And here I am now. I'm starting to do it. I've got my first outside instructor on. I've got a second one who's already shot for me, and 2 more that are shooting right now. And I'm going to start building this catalog out where, again, I'm going to have a better marketplace for people to come, multiple instructors, multiple focuses that they're focusing on, and just it's going to be better for everyone. And I didn't have to change anything.
Eli Knight, Professor Knight. What a badass name. That's that guy you got on your platform.
Yeah.
But what an amazing story that you just told, with all those elements of a door opens right in front of you. They say, we'd like to connect with you and host you on our platform. And it's just the natural tendency that we all have as humans, or in this society, the negative society we're in, to come up with 101 reasons why I can't. That won't work. No, block. And they're just like, yeah, ignore all that shit you just listed. You just film it and send it to us. It's just like shit, right? And so, yeah, that's why. I mean, we got to get out of our own way sometimes, right? And just.
I feel like this is a natural tendency of humans, and it's not a bad thing that you're going to find the flaws in the plan before you try the plan. But it can become your own hindrance if all you look at is the flaws. Okay, you have to keep remembering that there's a chunk of gold in the middle there that you want. You can't just be thinking there's too many rocks in front of it. I'm just going to leave that one for someone else. You don't start picking at the ones, figuring out, get the lever necessary to move the big one, get some help with the other one, find a way to deal with the problems. Don't ignore the problems, but don't let them stop you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of the goals that I have right now that I am moving towards, I know darn well there are certain pieces along that journey that I have no idea how to do, but I know damn well. Have to. That's right. But I know damn well I can figure out how to do each of those pieces as I come up to that stage of the plan. But I mean, a big part of it, for what I'm wanting to create and for what you are creating is the content, is to create the content. And you just get better at that as well. And there's a lot of pieces to this, and it doesn't all have to be super polished, but if you get it in motion, you do incrementally get better as you go.
Yeah. I can give you another example here that's more personal one. I started making a YouTube channel, and you actually were on a couple of videos that I made for Because
Oh,
Jitsu
yeah, that's right.
tutorial YouTube channel. Yeah, and I put a lot of work into some of those videos, and I felt like they were, they were really good for what they were. I put a ton of research into the best practices for YouTube, trying
Mm,
to make sure that I was playing the algorithm well. I was sharing it on Reddit and Instagram and like trying to build this thing. And it was building, but the problem was making one of these videos was extremely time intensive. Yeah, I had to do a ton of extra editing. I had to do some Photoshop work. It was like a lot of effort to get one 10-minute video up on YouTube. And I probably got like, I don't know, like 60 of them out there. It was hard to do, but I got them out there. And then all of a sudden it came to me like, first of all, it was taxing my time to the point that I was just considering dropping it wholesale. I'm like, I'm not making enough out of this. And there's other things that need my time more. And I was sort of leaning in that direction anyways. And then I thought to myself one day, why am I shooting these techniques like by themselves? Like I would just be me and a student that would take some extra time after class that would shoot a bunch of techniques, and they would take a bunch of editing and all this polish to put up on YouTube. When at the same time, during the same day at the class just before shooting that, I had just demonstrated 3 or 4 techniques to 30 people.
right.
So here's where the simplification came in. I just had somebody, one of my students, hold a camera and record the content that was disappearing into the air
Yeah.
if it wasn't recorded. And that's my job. I'm there to do that anyways, just to show these techniques 2 times a day, 3 techniques a class. There's 6 techniques that I didn't have to do any extra work for. They're happening anyways, that I just took that content. And now I have almost 500 videos from just doing classes since August.
Wow. Yeah. And that content went so fast. That is a great example of sometimes the perfect thing that you can build is connected to something that you're already doing right now, even if it's something that you're doing as a hobby. Like, I mean, I don't know what people are doing out there. Maybe somebody does a painting once in a while, or maybe somebody's making some kind of art thing or something, or maybe somebody's figuring out some technical stuff or whatever. And you just, I mean, in a lot of cases, you can just film what you're doing and create content. Yeah. It really is that simple. And you go, but then I have a thought of something I want to.
Well, I was going to say that's the Twitch model. Okay. If you know what Twitch is, they're just people playing video games. It's not people beating video games. It's not like the fastest world record. Some people are on there trying to do that, but most of all, they're just playing video games and talking to the camera and interacting with people like they're going to do anyways. They're video game holics, right? They're there to play and it's fun. Same thing for what I was doing. I'm just shooting what I love doing and what I do for a job anyways. And it just so happens that you can repurpose it for a content.
Except in your case, you are beating people. you are winning
true.
The game. Oh my God. I saw you put this guy in a submission the last time I was there, and you put him in 3 submissions at the same time.
Yeah.
You had 3 parts of his body locked up. And I was thinking, as a white belt, well, I know how to get out of that. I just have to figure out how to do a nipple twist with my free foot.
Pretty much. Yeah, that was a very strange position. I call a trilemma, where you have somebody literally in 3 different submission holds at the same time, and they have one limb left to try to escape, and it's just like a timer ticking down.
It's just one limb left with which to flail miserably. That's all that limb is good for at that point. I think you had a free hand too. You could have read a magazine, just chilled out and watched Netflix while killing a person like multiple ways. It is ridiculous how skilled you are at jiu-jitsu. You did that for 12 years, I think you said, to get your black belt. Now you've continued past that, so it's more than that now.
Yeah, we're at 14 now.
Jeez, man, holy crap. And like you said, you're a sponge, right? So that's interesting. So is it the case in your journey that you would be shown a technique and pretty much be like 60% of the way there, like right out of the gate? Did it feel that way?
Much.
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
my
pretty
God,
much,
man. So that's helpful when you're learning jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah. It's never a detriment, but what you don't want it to be is a crutch.
Yeah, I get you. Well, you've drilled that hard. Like, we're not talking like an hour a week here. Like, I mean, you were teaching. How many classes at one point were you up to?
Oh man, when we were going full out before COVID and we had all of our classes going, I was teaching between 17 to 19 classes a week. And
people might not know that before some of, the Drew now, you you did mixed martial arts professionally at a point for a chunk of time.
For a couple of years.
Yeah, for a couple of years. And that's not nothing. There's so many dummies out there who think, oh, I'd go in there and just hit them like that. It's like, yeah, idiot, try shadow boxing for 3 minutes and then come have a conversation with it. Shadow boxing. Not even hitting the bag. And then if the bag's hitting you back, it's a little bit of a different thing, you know? And yeah, I mean, your training has been pretty involved for those 14 years, like pretty darn involved. So you have to be really smart with your time to then create a business as well. But what you're doing now that you're doing so successfully has, like we were talking about, kind of come out of, I don't want to say flippantly what you're doing anyways, but it has come out of what you're doing anyways, but also what you happen to be very highly skilled at.
Well, let me put it to you this way, is no matter how you're spending your time, and in my case, a lot of my time was spent basically taking care of my family and working at my hobby. So it shouldn't surprise anybody that those were skills that I acquired over the multiple decades I've been doing that. But no matter what you're doing, even if you're laying at home eating Cheetos and watching TV all day, whatever you're doing and spending your time doing, you're going to get better at. Okay, so just understand the power of that. If there's something you want to get better at or you need to get better at, you have to spend the time to do it. If that's too much to ask, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah,
that's just it.
Yeah, people only really see the success of something at the end of a big journey, you know, and that's true of any of these industries. So if you're laying on the couch eating Cheetos, watching Netflix, you're just going to get more efficient at snatching and eating the Cheeto. You just won't notice it.
You're going to be the best. But I mean, to get a little more meta about it, if all you're doing is telling yourself that you're worthless and a bunch of self-doubts keeps repeating in your head, you're going to get better at being worthless. It's sad to say, but this is part of the human experience. Is the more you tell yourself something, the more you do something, you're going to magnify that.
Yes. I've been reading a lot of Joe Dispenza, and I don't know if you're into him. I was reading his book the other night. Becoming Supernatural is one of his books. He does another one called Breaking the Habit of Yourself. But the chapter I read the other night was all about how these behaviors get completely reinforced. And what gets reinforced is like something that may have happened to you in your childhood or somewhere in your past that has an emotional connection. And you actually get stuck replaying that emotional response to that stuff your whole life. And I think he said 75% of your life becomes a program that you're just repeating all the time. That's right. And what's really scary is you go to these things talking about positive self-talk, and you often have to spend a couple of days with people who are sort of new to this, just helping them learn to even hear the self-talk going on in their minds. They think it's just silent, and it isn't. You have self-talk going on all the time, but it's so just normal and under the radar to people. They don't even realize it. And so they can be telling themselves, I'm worthless, or you know, this isn't going to work out, or I could never do that. And that can actually be going on in there like a tape, just playing over and over again, and you don't even realize it. And exactly like you're saying, you'll get better at replaying that story, and you'll just feel less worthy and all of this. And then you get even worse, where you become resentful and you look for places to put the blame. And I hate to say it, ladies and gentlemen, but every one of us needs to practice looking in the mirror and saying, I'm responsible for what I see there. And that's scary and powerful at the same time.
Yeah. There's two sides to that coin too. You can look in the mirror and claim responsibility, but you also need to look in the mirror and realize that, you know, maybe you weren't the one that put yourself there, but you're the one that can get yourself out.
Yes.
You know, and this is the thing too, is no matter how much self-help or psychiatry you go to, or how many experts you talk to, it is at the bottom of the barrel, at the end of the line. It's up to you to move your foot in front of the other.
Yes. And
nobody else can do that for you.
Thank you. And that is what I mean by that. Certainly things can happen to you, circumstances, people, awful stuff that wasn't that you did to yourself, but now there you are and you're responsible for fixing it.
Yes.
Whether it sucks or not, you know, no one's going to do it for you. Like Drew, did somebody come and do all this for you?
Strangely enough, no, I'm still waiting for that person.
Okay.
If you know where they are.
All right.
Yeah. Just give me my address.
I don't remember anybody getting me out of bed this morning. Pretty sure I was a team of one when that happened. far as I recall, as far as I was able to see anyways. If I took a picture with my phone, you'd just see me. And if you didn't, then that was a whole different show. If there's someone else in that photo,
some better security cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if nothing else from this podcast, if people take two things away, these are the two things that I want them to take away and actually make something of, is it is up to you to, be responsible for yourself. And that doesn't mean that you're responsible for where you're at necessarily. Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but you're responsible for getting yourself out. Like I said, nobody puts your foot in front of you. You do. Okay. And also that it's not as scary as you think when you do. And if you can put those two things together, that's basically my whole life story.
Nice. And then just one more foot in front of the other. And
right.
It's amazing where you can eat an elephant that way, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Probably rotten by the end, but you can get there.
Yeah. This has been good, Drew. There's so much that we could talk about, and I'm sure we will more in the future, but
for sure,
you're a busy guy. Your time is valuable. I appreciate it very much. And it is always a blast to talk to you. You're easy to do a podcast with because I can just go blah, 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 and you have the floor, and it's a good podcast.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Let's do this again.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. With that, we're going to wrap the show and say, have a lovely day, everybody. I don't know how to wrap this thing up because my podcast in and of itself is something I'm still polishing. So see you the fuck later, everybody. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to the Justin's Journey podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure and check out my other projects through my online portal at justinlewisartist.com.